Hey guys, welcome. I truly appreciate you being here, no matter where you are. Maybe you're lying in bed in a softly lit room. Maybe you're in a quiet corner of a distant town. Or perhaps you're just settling down after a long, exhausting day. Wherever you are, thank you for choosing to spend this time with me. Take a moment. Let your shoulders relax. Close your eyes if you'd like. Feel the warmth of your blanket, the steady rhythm of your breath, the stillness of this very moment. This is your time, your space to unwind. Tonight, we'll gently travel together through one of the most breathtaking and misunderstood chapters in human history, the story of the Mongol Empire. You might have heard echoes of it in school. Warriors on horseback, ruthless conquests, names like Genghis Khan whispered with awe and fear. But there is so much more, so much that has been forgotten or never told at all. This is not just a history lesson, it's a journey through the windswept grasslands of Central Asia, where stars shine endlessly overhead, and where a young boy named Temujin would rise from obscurity to shape the destiny of continents. You'll hear about the battles, yes, but also about the silences between them, the campfires, the prayers to the eternal sky, the way Mongol children learned to ride before they could walk. We'll talk about how their armies changed warfare, but also how their couriers revolutionized communication. About cities conquered, yes, but also roads built, trade nurtured, ideas shared across borders. So please, lean back. Let your imagination stretch across the steppes. Picture the horses galloping in the twilight. Feel the wind brushing against your face. Listen for the soft crackle of a fire far off in the distance. This is the story of a people often painted as savages, yet whose legacy still flows quietly beneath the surface of our world today. This is the story of how the Mongols almost conquered Europe, and how, in many ways, they shaped it. And as you listen, you may feel sleep begin to gently tug at the corners of your thoughts. That's okay. Let it come. I'll be right here, carrying the story forward, guiding you deeper into the world that once was and into dreams shaped by history. Chapter 1: Origins of the Mongol People. Long before Genghis Khan rose to power, the Mongols were a people shaped by the harshness of the steppe. The vast grasslands of Central Asia stretch endlessly beneath an open sky, where survival depends on resilience, skill, and an intimate bond with horses. The Mongol tribes were not a single united group, but a collection of clans often at odds. They lived as nomads, moving with the seasons, herding livestock, and mastering the art of horseback riding from an early age. The cold winters and scorching summers forged a tough, mobile people, warriors by necessity, but also herders, traders, and storytellers. The steppe itself was a place of cycles: birth, death, war, peace, and migration. It was home to wolves and eagles, and the nomads learned to coexist with nature's raw power. They worshipped the eternal blue sky, believing it watched over their fate and guided their leaders. The Mongol language was one of many tongues spoken on the steppe, but their shared culture was one of loyalty, family, and an unbreakable code of honor. Though divided by clans, there was always the dream of unification, of a leader strong enough to bind the tribes into one unstoppable force. This background sets the stage for the rise of a boy born into hardship, Temujin, whose vision would change the course of history forever. Chapter 2: Temujin and the Rise of Genghis Khan. Temujin's story begins with struggle. Born around 1162, his early years were marked by loss and exile. When his father, a minor tribal chief, was poisoned by rivals, Temujin and his family were abandoned by their clan and left to survive in the wilderness. But adversity did not break him. Instead, it forged a leader, someone who understood the harsh realities of the steppe and the importance of loyalty. Through alliances, marriage, and sheer determination, Temujin gathered followers. His leadership style was revolutionary. He promoted men by merit, not birthright, rewarding loyalty and punishing betrayal with ruthless efficiency. By 1206, after years of brutal battles and political maneuvering, Temujin was proclaimed Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler. This title was not given lightly. It symbolized the unity of the Mongol tribes under a single banner. Genghis Khan's vision was clear: to unite the steppe, secure the survival of his people, and expand beyond the borders of Mongolia. His laws, the yasa, codified loyalty, justice, and order, creating a disciplined society unlike any before it. His army was a reflection of this order, highly mobile, flexible, and terrifyingly effective. The Mongol horsemen could cover vast distances in days, using superior tactics, communication, and an intimate knowledge of their environment. But Genghis Khan was more than a warrior. He was a strategist, a diplomat, and a leader who valued knowledge and innovation. His reign laid the foundation for an empire that would stretch from the Pacific Ocean to the heart of Europe. Chapter 3: Campaigns and Military Conquests. With the tribes united under his rule, Genghis Khan turned his gaze outward. What lay beyond the borders of Mongolia was not merely opportunity, it was necessity. The steppe could not provide endlessly for a growing empire. The promise of trade, the danger of hostile neighbors, and the ambition to forge something greater led the Mongols to ride forth, not as raiders, but as builders of an empire. Their first major campaign began against the powerful Xisha kingdom in northwestern China. It was here that Genghis Khan tested the strength of his new army, a force built on speed, discipline, and absolute loyalty. The Mongols did not rely on sheer numbers. They moved like water, fast, unpredictable, and overwhelming. Xisha fell, and with it, the Mongols gained valuable siege technologies and an understanding of Chinese fortifications. Next came the Jin dynasty. Unlike the nomadic tribes, the Jin ruled over cities, great walled centers of culture and commerce. But walls were no match for Mongol ingenuity. They employed captured engineers, built catapults and siege towers, and coordinated attacks with frightening precision. Cities that resisted were punished severely, while those that submitted were absorbed into the empire and spared destruction. But the campaign that would reveal the full ferocity of the Mongol war machine was against the Khwarezmian Empire. Located in present-day Iran and Central Asia, the Khwarezmian Shah made a fatal mistake. He executed Mongol envoys who had come to negotiate trade. Genghis Khan responded with fury and precision. What followed was one of the most devastating campaigns in medieval history. Samarkand, Bukhara, Nishapur, cities known for their beauty and knowledge, were razed. The Mongols used scorched earth tactics, psychological warfare, and terror, not just to destroy, but to send a message: betrayal would not be tolerated. Yet amidst this destruction, Genghis Khan also protected scholars, spared artisans, and promoted the exchange of ideas. He understood that conquest without structure was chaos. With every city conquered, he created a web of administrators, tax systems, and protection for merchants. The Mongol army was organized unlike any other. Soldiers trained year-round. They traveled light, carrying multiple horses per rider, allowing them to ride for days without rest. Communication was flawless, using a decimal structure of units, tens, hundreds, thousands, each led by trusted commanders. Orders were followed with near religious discipline. Their use of deception was legendary. They would retreat in fake panic, luring enemies into ambushes. They created dummies to inflate their numbers. They used fire and smoke to sow confusion, and always they struck swiftly and without warning. By the late 1220s, the Mongol Empire stretched from the Sea of Japan to the Caspian Sea, but they were not done. Their campaigns reached the Caucasus, the edges of the Rus principalities, and even into Eastern Europe. In 1241, at the battles of Liegnitz and Mohi, Mongol forces crushed European armies with terrifying efficiency. Armored knights fell before mobile archers. Fortresses burned. Europe trembled, unprepared for the force that had emerged from the east. And then, suddenly, they stopped. The death of Genghis Khan's successor, Ogedei, forced the Mongol princes to return home and elect a new leader. Europe was spared, not by strength, but by circumstance. What the world had witnessed was not simply invasion, it was transformation. The Mongol campaigns reshaped trade routes, political boundaries, and the very psychology of warfare. They were feared, yes, but also respected. Now, as we rest here and reflect, let us listen to the echoes of hoofs in the distance. The campaigns of the Mongols were brutal, but behind the conquest was something deeper, a belief that the world could be united, not by birthright, but by merit and order. Let's now explore what held this vast empire together, not just swords and arrows, but law, infrastructure, and governance. Chapter 4: Governance, Culture, and Legacy. An empire built on conquest alone is destined to crumble. What made the Mongol Empire so extraordinary wasn't just its reach, but its structure, a system of governance so advanced and adaptable that it held together the largest contiguous land empire in history. Under Genghis Khan and his successors, the Mongols created a framework of rule that valued merit over nobility, loyalty over privilege, and efficiency over tradition. Though they were warriors at heart, they became administrators by necessity. One of the Khan's first reforms was the yasa, a code of law that, while partially shrouded in legend, governed everything from military discipline to theft, religious freedom to inheritance. The yasa was unwritten, but universally known and enforced. In a world without printing presses or mass literacy, its power lay in its consistency and the fear of punishment. Justice was swift, but not always brutal. Genghis Khan outlawed the kidnapping of women, theft of livestock, and betrayal of trust. He promoted religious tolerance, allowing Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, and shamans to coexist. He understood that unity did not mean uniformity, and that empires endured when people were free to worship, trade, and speak. The Mongols also revolutionized communication. They created the yam, a vast relay network of postal stations, riders, and supply points. Messages could travel thousands of miles in a matter of days, connecting the farthest reaches of the empire. These riders, known as arrow messengers, were protected by imperial order. To harm one was punishable by death. Trade flourished under Mongol rule. With the Silk Road under one power, merchants could travel from Venice to Beijing with relative safety. The Pax Mongolica, the Mongol peace, opened markets, facilitated diplomacy, and allowed the exchange of goods, ideas, and technology. Paper, printing, gunpowder, and medical knowledge flowed cross borders. Cultural exchange thrived. Mongol courts welcomed Persian astronomers, Chinese engineers, Arab mathematicians, and European travelers like Marco Polo. Far from being cultural destroyers, the Mongols became cultural bridges. In their courts, you might hear 5 languages spoken, 5 faiths honored, and 5 sciences debated. Despite their nomadic roots, the Mongols adapted to governance. They retained local administrators, respected existing customs, and focused on results. In Persia, they became Muslim. In China, they ruled as emperors of the Yuan dynasty. In Russia, they became the feared overlords, known as the Golden Horde. Yet, as with all empires, cracks began to form. Succession disputes, overextension, and the sheer diversity of their holdings made central control difficult. The empire gradually fragmented into khanates, the Yuan in China, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai in Central Asia, and the Golden Horde in the Northwest. But even in fragmentation, the Mongol influence remained. Their legacy lived on in the roads they built, the borders they redrew, the languages they influenced, and the cultural blending they sparked. So, as we settle deeper into this quiet moment together, let's reflect on something remarkable. The Mongol Empire, born from hardship and war, became, for a time, a force of order, connection, and curiosity. A vast web held not just by strength, but by vision. And in that vision, we see a truth that echoes even now, that greatness isn't born solely in peace or war, but in the space between, in leadership that adapts, in unity that respects difference, and in stories like this one, passed down not by swords, but by whispers under the stars. Chapter 5. The Fall and Fragmentation of the Mongol Empire. Every empire has its twilight. For the Mongols, that decline was not sudden, nor was it rooted in one fatal error. It came gradually, as all great things do, through a combination of ambition, division, and the sheer weight of holding a world together. After Genghis Khan's death in 1227, his empire did not collapse, it adapted. His sons and grandsons continued to expand its borders. Kublai Khan established the Yuan dynasty in China. Hulagu Khan carved out the Ilkhanate in Persia. Batu Khan founded the Golden Horde in the west. The Chagatai Khanate thrived in Central Asia. Together, they ruled over lands that stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the Black Sea. But with such vastness came fragmentation. These khanates, though linked by blood and memory, began to pursue their own agendas. Cultural differences deepened. The Yuan court in China became more Chinese than Mongol. The Ilkhanate embraced Islam and Persian customs. The Golden Horde mingled with Slavic traditions. Slowly, the empire's unity of vision began to dissolve. Succession disputes only worsened the rifts. The tradition of Kurultai, councils where leaders were elected, gave way to internal power struggles. Brothers fought brothers. Uncles betrayed nephews. Assassinations, rival claims, and civil wars sapped the strength that once made the Mongols unstoppable. External pressures mounted. In China, the Yuan dynasty faced economic hardship, natural disasters, and rebellion. In 1368, the Ming dynasty rose and drove the Mongols back to the steppe. In Persia, the Ilkhanate fractured after the death of its last effective ruler, leading to decades of disunity. The Golden Horde splintered into smaller khanates and struggled to maintain dominance over the Rus states, which were slowly gaining power and independence. The Chagatai Khanate fractured as well, giving rise to local warlords and later paving the way for Timur, or Tamerlane, who would ironically attempt to revive Mongol glory through brutal conquest. And yet, even as their political empire faded, the Mongols' influence remained. Their legacy was etched into the trade routes that still connected East and West, into the languages they touched, the borders they reshaped, and the fear and fascination they instilled in the world. Genghis Khan's descendants would live on not as rulers of a single empire, but as echoes in the DNA of entire nations. The Mongol bow would be replaced by gunpowder, the horse by the cannon, but the memory of their thunderous advance would remain. And so, as the fire dims tonight, and we reach the final chapters of our journey, we remember them not only as conquerors, but as connectors of people, of cultures, of time itself. The Mongol Empire did not vanish, it transformed. And somewhere, under a starlit sky, the wind still whispers across the grasslands, carrying the stories of riders who once shook the world. Chapter 6. The Echoes of Empire. The Mongol Influence on the Modern World. Though the Mongol Empire fractured centuries ago, its echoes ripple through time, influencing governments, trade, technology, and culture in ways often unnoticed, yet deeply embedded in our modern world. Let's begin with something as fundamental as communication. The Mongol relay system, the yam, was more than just a postal service. It was the conceptual ancestor of modern logistics, a blueprint for how to move information quickly and securely across vast distances. Today's courier systems, emergency response networks, and even parts of military communication infrastructure owe a distant debt to the precision and efficiency of the yam. Trade routes, too, were reshaped. The Pax Mongolica allowed merchants to travel safely between Europe and Asia, leading to an explosion of cultural and commercial exchange. Spices, silk, porcelain, and precious stones moved westward. Mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and printing techniques flowed eastward. These exchanges seeded the soil of the Renaissance, a rebirth in Europe made possible in part by knowledge safeguarded and transmitted through Mongol rule. Consider language. Many Turkic and Slavic languages absorbed Mongolic terms, especially in regions once under the Golden Horde. Place names, loanwords, and even grammatical structures bear the imprint of Mongol administration. Russian governments, for instance, reflects a centralized style developed during the Mongol yoke, with layers of bureaucracy that echo the Khanates. Religious tolerance, an idea we now hold as a virtue, was practiced and protected under Mongol rule. In a time when most empires imposed their gods, the Mongols welcomed many. Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, Taoist, Confucian, and shamanic practices coexisted. Their model of governance accepted diversity as a strength, a concept that would only become widespread centuries later. In warfare and military strategy, their legacy endures in mobility-based tactics, psychological warfare, and logistical planning. Armies today study the Mongols for their ability to coordinate large-scale, long-distance campaigns with minimal internal dissent. The emphasis on meritocratic leadership, swift execution, and adaptability influenced not only generals, but the entire theory of modern combat. Even in business and economics, their example persists. The idea of trade zones, protected corridors for commerce, and multinational economic agreements mirror what the Mongols built. By reducing corruption, protecting merchants, and encouraging open markets, they laid the groundwork for economic cooperation beyond borders. And then there's the intangible, the myth, the legend, the cultural memory. In literature, cinema, and folklore, the Mongols continue to captivate. From novels and documentaries to films and anime, their legacy has inspired countless interpretations, sometimes villainized, often misunderstood, but always compelling. The story of Genghis Khan, the orphan turned emperor, resonates because it is a story of resilience, strategy, and the audacity to challenge fate. In modern Mongolia, his memory lives on in statues, airports, currency, and national pride. Yet even beyond those borders, the spirit of the Mongol age whispers to the curious, to those who see history not as a series of disconnected events, but as a living thread. The globalized world we live in, with its interconnected economies, multicultural societies, and complex networks of diplomacy, owes something, however distant, to the empire once ruled by a nomad who believed in unity, order, and the power of movement. And so, as we drift deeper into the night, let us sit with this thought. The Mongols are not merely a chapter in a history book. They are part of the software that runs our present, hidden in plain sight, etched in roads, written into laws, and carried in stories. The fire hasn't gone out. It's just burning differently. And now, as our long journey together draws to a close, I want to thank you, truly, for walking beside me through the echoes of history, through the wind-swept steppes, the thunder of hooves, the flicker of ancient fires, and the whispers of forgotten empires. We've witnessed the birth of a boy in exile, the rise of a leader who defied fate, and the shaping of a world that still bears his fingerprints. We followed warriors who carried nations on horseback, listened to tales around a yurt's hearth, and explored an empire whose ambition stretched not only across geography, but across time. Maybe you learned something new tonight, or maybe you simply felt the calm that comes with a good story well told. Maybe your thoughts drifted somewhere else, toward your own memories, your own dreams, your own story. That's okay. That's the magic of moments like this, where history and imagination blend and time itself slows down. If you're still awake, thank you for staying with me. And if sleep has gently arrived while the story unfolded, then I hope it's carried you somewhere peaceful, wrapped in the soft warmth of dreams. This tale of the Mongol Empire isn't just about power or war. It's about movement, about how a spark from the steppe can become a flame that touches the world, about how even the most distant, wild, and wind-beaten places can give rise to something unforgettable. And perhaps in some quiet way, it reminds us that greatness doesn't always come from palaces, but from resilience, from unity, from vision, and from those who refuse to be defined by where they begin. Wherever you are right now, in a quiet room, under a blanket of stars, or listening with eyes gently closed, I wish you peace. Thank you for your presence, for your attention, and for your curiosity. Have a beautiful rest of the night, and above all, sweet dreams.